Good evening. My name is Pam Blanton, and I'm the founder of Partners for Housing. This is Vicki Isett, and this evening we're going to talk to you a little bit about housing options for people with disabilities. So to start, I thought I'd give you a little bit of background a little bit about our background. I've spent more than 20 years working in affordable housing, 7 years as the housing coordinator at King County Developmental Disabilities Division. And during the time I was at the county, we had access to a really robust Section 8 program here in King County. And so in a 5-year period, we moved more than 450 people from their family homes into their own housing into the community. So we learned a lot about what's possible. And Vicki?
And I'm Vicki Isett. I have been working with people with developmental disabilities for about 30 years. I worked at the ARC of King County, I worked with the Bellevue School District, and most recently I have been the executive director for community homes, providing community-based housing for people with disabilities. I've done that for the last 8 years. Pam and I started our collaboration in 2013, and we came from a couple different models for community-based housing and found some creative ways to put what we each knew together to create more capacity in the community. And we'd like to share with you tonight some of the things that we've learned over the past couple years, some of the important elements for housing, and we would like to set the stage for that by showing you just a short video that shares with you a little bit of our philosophy and approach to community-based housing.
When Jenny was born, our reaction was, what do we do? What's the rest of our life going to be like? And it didn't take us long to realize that it wasn't going to be a whole lot different than it had been. And especially when one of the doctors showed us a picture of children with Down syndrome in an institution. And at that point in time, I can remember just like yesterday, Ann and I looked at each other and we said, no way. Opening the first house was just a little scary, mainly because we were treading in ground that we just had only theorized about, and now we had to live it. One thing led to another. We got money, and we got money from the state, so we opened it, I think in the spring of '96.
Independence means many things. For our residents, it means the opportunity to live outside their parents' homes, to feel what it's like to spread their wings.
I've enjoyed being independent, and I always want to be independent.
Jenny is a lovely woman, and she's always composed. It's funny because I see so much of her mom, Ann, in her. She is very grounded. She's very responsible. She works in downtown Seattle and has for many, many years.
I've enjoyed my job for, I had my anniversary of work was 6th of September. So it's my 19th year. I do mailings, but mostly, like I said, most of my work is my computer.
Jeremy is a happy guy, and we knew for many years that at some point Jeremy would really thrive in one of our homes.
I have 5 brothers here. I'm like, they're good friends to me, and I love them. They're like my chumps. I call them that because they're my brothers, and we're all like buddies here, so I love it here.
Watching him come in and find his place and share his enthusiasm with his housemates has just been really wonderful to watch.
We talk a lot, and then Then we started laughing, and we're like, what is so funny with us? Are we funny guys in this house?
Over and over again, we hear from parents, wow, I didn't know he could do that. Or I didn't know she had that capacity. So watching that happen is a gift every single day. There are literally thousands of adults with developmental disabilities in Washington State who are just reaching an age where they would either like to live outside of their parents' home, or they have to live outside their parents' home because their parents are aging. And so we who provide affordable housing are really working very, very hard to meet that need.
I mean, what if there wasn't enough homes, like for community homes? There need to be more, you know? That's what I'm thinking. I mean, for the future, you know? We need more. We just can't let other people stay with their parents. I mean, they want to move on, don't they? Yeah, so I moved on. I love it here.
Okay, so our intention this evening is to give you an overview of the housing options available in Washington State and to talk about the services that Community Homes and Partners for Housing provides. And we've left plenty of time for questions at the end, so if you could hold your questions, that'd be great. And we'll have plenty of time for those. So thinking about community-based housing is very daunting for families. What we've learned over the years is that there really are 4 components to a quality life. It's not just about housing, it's about creating a quality life. And there are 4 universal components that we all need. We all need affordable housing. We all need supports. We need networks. And we need something meaningful to do during the day. So when you're thinking about housing, all of these pieces play a part. So as you're beginning the journey toward housing, you might be working particularly on employment or trying to get the right caregivers in. It's all leading you toward that goal of community living.
Good with that?
Yep.
So as we mentioned earlier, Pam and I started working together in 2013. Pam obviously has a great background having worked with the King County Housing Authority, and so she knew a lot about the bricks and mortar, and I have more of a service background providing support services to adults with developmental disabilities. Community Homes was founded in 1995 by John Terrian, the gentleman you saw first in the video, and he created the organization for his daughter Jenny. He and his wife started it because they wanted Jenny to have a great place to live in the community. And Pam founded Partners for Housing in 2010 because she saw the need for growing the capacity and finding new ways to house people in the community. Community Homes currently has 7 adult family homes that are exclusively for adults with developmental disabilities. Those are all in East King County at this time. There are about 1,000 adult family homes in the state of Washington, but only 18 of them serve exclusively people with developmental disabilities. And obviously we have 7 of those. So we've got the adult family homes, and they work great for people who want to live with several other folks and are able to take care of some of their own personal care needs during the day, because there are 5 people there with 1 caregiver. But Pam and I saw the need for creating a different model, and we've called it shared living. It turns out we kind of made up that name. I think Pam made it up, but we consider it pretty official. You won't find it in the regulations anywhere, but it's what we do. And we together created 5 of those households just in the last year and a half. So that's a much more rapid trajectory than we were able to do with adult family homes. I'm going to grab my paper so that I don't miss anything, because I have so many important things to tell you. Pam is going to tell you a little bit about the different housing options. And we've mentioned a couple, but she's going to go into just a little bit more detail about those.
These are some of Community Homes,
Oh yeah, and those
adult
are our
family
houses.
homes here in King County.
I forgot that. Yeah, those are some of our homes, and we do try to be the best looking house on the block. We really want to enhance neighborhoods wherever we are.
Okay, so what are the housing options that are available? The only entitlement in Washington State is an adult family home. If you have Medicaid, you're entitled to an adult family home. Vicki's going to talk more about adult family homes as we go forward. Supported Living Services is a program offered through the Division of the Developmental Disabilities Administration. If you're eligible for services through DDA, it is only available to people on the core waiver, which is a higher level of service. About 20% of the people who receive services from DDA get the core waiver. It is not an entitlement, and it's based on the funding they have available. So in practicality, people only get the core supported living and the core waiver if they go into crisis. Well, we've been working with families who really want to plan, so we've been developing these models of shared living. This is new for us to be leading families through the process, but families have been doing this on their own for years.
So we're going to talk about primarily adult family homes and shared living tonight. If you would like to learn more about the core waiver and the supported living program, that's something that your case manager at DDA can help talk you through. Or Jim may want to invite someone from Alpha Supported Living to talk at a future meeting. Adult family homes are generally a ready-made model. Someone has purchased a home and they've set it up to provide care for either elderly people or people with developmental disabilities. There are a number of different specialties that homes can have, and they are licensed through the state of Washington. You can have up to 6 residents in any given adult family home. As I mentioned, there are about 1,000 adult family homes in King County, but only 18 of them exclusively serve people with developmental disabilities. And there are more homes throughout the state of Washington that also just serve people with disabilities. Most homes serve senior citizens, and most homes will tell you that they accept Medicaid residents, but a lot of them don't actually have available beds for people who are on Medicaid. we find that your DDA case manager or home and community services case manager can refer you to an adult family home, and they will actually dictate how much your son, daughter, brother, sister will pay for their monthly room and board. Generally, the resident at this point in time pays $670 a month for room and board both. So that's their rent, utilities, and food. Medicaid directly pays the caregiver in that home for services. So it's a very affordable model for people with developmental disabilities who are on Medicaid. They generally set the room and board rate just a little bit below what they're receiving from Social Security. It doesn't leave a lot for spending money, but it is definitely affordable in terms of caring for your basic needs. Each of our homes, and I'm going to talk about community homes in particular now, each of our homes has 5 residents. We found that that was a better number than 6. We don't want to overcrowd houses. We do remodel our homes so that everyone has their own bedroom, private bedrooms. They do share bathrooms. We make sure that our residents have a living room of their own, a dining room of their own, and a kitchenette of their own. So we stock the kitchen, and we focus very much on helping people continue to learn new skills, acquire the skills that they need to be more independent, you know, preparing simple meals and participating in doing their laundry and keeping their room neat and wiping the bathroom sink down after they've shaved, that sort of thing. So it's very much a lifelong learning model. In addition, we encourage and support people's engagement in the community. So we make sure that people are going out into the community for recreation, for jobs, for volunteerism, for recreation. Kind of a funny story, we applied recently for a grant to one of the cities. I'm not going to name the city. And their comment was that they saw our residents out wandering around in the streets. And when asked about that, I replied that that's exactly what we want them to do. We want them to be out in the community. They weren't literally in the streets, you know, they were on sidewalks and they were being safe. We want them out in the community. We don't want them sitting at home watching TV and just passing the time. We want them to be engaging in interesting things and holding down jobs at Starbucks and at Microsoft and at QFC and going to the YMCA and working out at Crunch Fitness and catching the Metro bus. You know, we've got a great Metro bus training program here. Or riding Access, or walking around the block just for exercise, which is something that all the rest of us at least try to do or intend to do on a regular basis. So I thought that was interesting that they weren't really quite comfortable with the fact that our residents were walking around. We provide our residents with the support as it's indicated in their individual support plan, which is prepared on an annual basis with the DDA or Home and Community Services case manager in collaboration with the caregiver and the family. And in our model, we require that families remain engaged. We think that our residents' quality of life really is dependent upon their relationships with their family members and their continued involvement in their lives. I'd like to tell you a little story about Andy. This isn't Andy, this is Andrew, who is a character, and he is a cheerleader, by the way. The Highlands Center cheerleading squad performed at one of our events, and Andrew liked the girls so much that he became a cheerleader. So he's a pretty tricky guy. But Andy was in the video that you saw a little bit earlier, and Andy moved into our Woodinville home about 1.5 years ago. He runs marathons. He's run the Boston Marathon multiple times. I think his time this year was 2 hours and 42 minutes. I might be off by a minute or two there, but it was right in that vicinity. He ran a marathon in Hong Kong. He's run all over the world. And he runs every day from the home. When he moved into our house, he didn't have a lot of friends. He had running partners, but he didn't have a lot of friends. And he now has a number of guys who know him well, and he's even getting some of them out with him. Okay, he's not in that picture either. I'm really sorry. I decided I wanted to talk about Andy tonight, and I didn't update my photos. But these are his roommates. And as they said in the video, they're funny guys. And Andy's a funny guy. And if you visit his home, his room is absolutely filled with all the ribbons that he's won and the medals that he's collected over time. Andy now has a job working at Microsoft. He has 4 roommates whom he considers to be very dear friends, and he's got a really great life. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to the process that we go through when someone wants to become a resident of an adult family home. We do have an application on our website, and you should be able to find that on the brochures that were out in the hallway. I guess for those listening at home, the website is www.community-homes.org. And there is a resident application there. We take a look at that application, and it will guide you through some of our expectations in terms of what we require families to do in terms of being involved with their sons and daughters, and what kinds of residents our homes work really well for. We spend time getting to know people, and the referral does need to go through the DDA or Home and Community Services case manager in order to secure a placement in an adult family home. It's a pretty lengthy process, really. It takes, I'd say, 3 to 6 months to really assess whether it's going to be a good fit and get all of the copious paperwork completed that is required by DSHS. And then we make the transition into the home, making sure that there are lots of opportunities for all of the residents to spend time together prior to their living together. We know that just simply putting people in a house together doesn't make them friends, and it doesn't make them compatible. And so we try to do as much assessment as possible before that happens. And then Community Homes, as a nonprofit organization, has a really strong philosophy of supporting our caregivers and residents and family members. We have functions throughout the year. We have monthly meetings with our caregivers. I'm sure all of you have employed caregivers over the years, and it can be a pretty isolating experience for the folks who are actually providing the care. And so we make sure that we've got networking meetings, and we keep each other up to speed on best practices, and just provide that peer support that we think is critical to job satisfaction. We have about 20% turnover among our caregivers in any given year, and the national average is more like 40%. So we feel pretty good about that. Our caregivers generally stay about 5 years, and we work really hard at making sure that their quality of life is as good as your sons and daughters' quality of life, so that everybody is together for the greatest length of time possible, and we provide continuity of care across that time period. I think that's enough about adult family homes right now. I think we've got one more photo of another one of our homes. These are our ladies in Redmond. They've lived together since 2006, and we'll come back to them with another story a little bit later.
And so I'm going to talk a little bit about shared living. While an adult family home is a ready-made model, shared living is very family-driven. So we start by matching compatible roommates, and we introduce families. They spend some time to get to know each other, and then they decide what the housing is going to look like for their son or daughter. And you know, at my time at the county and with the homes that we've collaborated with community homes, no two of those homes are the same. They're all as very unique as the people who live there. And families really like this model because they have more control over the way the house is set up and the way things run. Where community homes has 5 residents, the number of residents in shared living is up to the families who are creating the housing solution. So really it seems to be driven a lot by the bricks and mortar. 3 roommates tends to be a really good number of roommates, and if they have a live-in caregiver, then you're looking for a 4-bedroom house. So it depends on what the families want, but it's more driven by the housing stock that's available. In shared living, we can serve people with really high support needs and people who are very independent. So the range of support is different, is wide and broad, and we set up the support and the care according to the needs of the people in the house. And families are very, very involved. So families it's their vision that we're fulfilling when we help them develop this home, and they stay very involved, often taking their sons and daughters home 1 or 2 weekends a month to give the caregiver a break and helping to set up their activities. And so we try to spread, depending on the support needed in the home, we can't expect the caregiver to do everything for 3 people, so the families stay really involved. Where community homes, adult family homes, are funded by Medicaid, this is a different model of funding. It's a combination of those Medicaid-funded personal care hours and Section 8, if Section 8 is available in your community. Most communities, it is not so available, but we are very fortunate here in King County, which is a good thing because our housing costs are so high it would be impossible otherwise. But just the idea of bringing 3 families together and sharing the costs makes everything more affordable. So there's also typically a private pay component. So the Medicaid personal care hours, Section 8, and private pay. We charge a consulting fee for development, and as far as availability, you know, if there's a group ready to go, we can help lead them through the process. So we try to bring the people together. They spend time getting to know each other, and when they're ready to move forward, we lead them through the process of getting the house set up. Okay, this is Christine. Christine has Rett syndrome. She has really high support needs. She needs support with eating. She doesn't speak. She's very, very sweet. She is mobile, but she needs a lot of support. And when I met Teresa, Christine's mom, Christine didn't have any services through DDA. Actually, let me take that back. She had individual family support, but she didn't qualify for any Medicaid support hours because when she was a little girl, her father passed away, and the Social Security that she got from her father was $150 more than DDA could serve her, so she was completely unserved. And we took her to a process. It's been a year now. She and her roommate and her caregiver have been living in their own apartment for a year. We'll talk a little bit more about that. There's Addie. That's her roommate. Very sweet women. So, what is the process of shared living? When I was working at the county for all those years, one thing that families kept asking for was roommate matching. We need roommates, we need roommates. We tried to get the county or the ARC or somebody to kind of take on this role of developing a roommate matching program, but nobody wanted to take it on. So ultimately I ended up leaving the county and developing a roommate matching program. And it starts with our residential assessment. We've developed an assessment that's about 127 questions. It asks all sorts of things about what support needs do you have, what are your favorite activities, what's the family's vision of a good day, what's your vision of a quality life, all sorts of questions that we ask so we can get a really big, broad understanding of where the family is coming from and what they want. That's an online assessment. There's a fee associated with that. And once it's completed, then we review the assessment and we start reviewing services. So the first thing we do is we look at the services that the person has, and just based on all my years of experience of working with the different systems, we can always help give families ideas of steps to take. So the residential assessment is a really good planning tool, and it's something that we encourage families to start early. And we're able to give them some steps to take to start to get ready for housing. Ultimately, when the families are ready to start exploring roommates, the residential assessment is the basis for matching compatible roommates. We match based on shared interest and shared family vision, not based on disability. I had a dad come up to me one time and said, my daughter has diabetes and I want her to live with 3 other girls with diabetes, and it's like, well, that's not how we do it. We match based on shared interest and shared family vision. Geographical parameters are very important because families want their sons and daughters, sisters, brothers to live near them. Gender is important, although it doesn't matter to us if there's both genders in the house. Most of the families that we have in our roommate pool prefer to have it a single gender, but that is up to the family. So once we see some potentially compatible roommates, I do a short bio on each person based on the questionnaire, and I get feedback from the family. And then I do an email introduction. I say, here's some potential people that you could be compatible with. And then they go have coffee and meet to see if there is chemistry. Because although we can see compatibility on paper, you can't get chemistry on paper. So we really encourage people to spend a lot of time getting to know each other, because we're going to build a community living setting around them. It's not like we have a spot for somebody to fill. So that time that people spend getting to know each other is really important. And our whole process of shared living development can take, 6 months to 18 months to 2 years. There's people we've been working with for a long time because you meet somebody and then you think, oh, that's not quite right. It's not just about the roommates being compatible. It's also very important that the families are compatible and have a shared vision. So we take that time up front for people to get to know each other. And then once they say, yeah, we're ready, we're great, and then we lead them through the process of finding the housing. Vicky's organization recruits caregivers. Vicky's organization provides ongoing support. We take them through the Section 8 process. We help them write job descriptions for caregivers, caregiver agreements. So we take them to the process of getting the home all set up. And this, you know, was really important for Christine and Addie, because Christine had she had individual family support available through DDA, which wasn't a lot, and now she has 230 Medicaid hours and is really able to have a great life with her roommate, Addie. Here's another one of our shared living homes. In this particular home, the caregiver and her husband have a son, and the three ladies, they all live in a 4-bedroom house. Two of our homes that we set up are 2 women each with 1 single living caregiver. So, you know, it's a great job for a couple. We put a lot of energy into creating a livable wage and a great job for the caregiver, talking to the parents about you know, making it a really nice package so that we can recruit a great caregiver and retain that caregiver. So, okay, Vicki?
And I would just like to add, this household, the 3 women residents have been together for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the same caregiver for about 12 years. And when that caregiver decided to retire, they came to us to help them find someone new. So I think one of the pervasive things that you'll find with the work that Pam and I do is that we want to make sure that we're creating homes that are for the residents. They're not homes for the caregivers, they're not homes for anyone else. They're homes for the residents, and so we work very hard to ensure that there's continuity across time so that those people can stay where they live and they can continue to call that their home. I wanted to talk just briefly about a resident, actually the first resident that Pam and I shared, and her name is Sarah. Sarah is about 35 years old, and she has Down syndrome and autism. And she lived in 2006, she moved into the women's home I showed you a picture of a little bit earlier. And she lived with those ladies for 7 years. And they had a great time together. But as Sarah aged, she found that she was really having a hard time keeping up with the other ladies. And where the philosophy of the home was very much oriented toward being out in the community, Sarah was finding that that wasn't really what she wanted to do. And where everyone was working on learning how to load the dishwasher or make their bed, Sarah became more and more interested in having someone help her with those things. And her dad and I decided that that home wasn't really working for her anymore, which is when Pam and I started our collaboration, and we started brainstorming, what can we do with Sarah? Where is Sarah gonna live? Because we weren't just gonna say, I'm sorry, Sarah, this doesn't work. We weren't gonna send her home. It was very important to Sarah that she have housemates. And so Pam and I identified another young woman. Okay, fine, maybe they're getting to be a little bit middle-aged. They're young to me. We identified another woman who was in a similar position. And because of her age, she was slowing down and feeling like she wanted to live someplace with a little bit slower pace. So we scoured the east side looking for a landlord who would rent to us at the Section 8 payment standard. Not an easy task, but we found some wonderful people who really wanted to make a difference in their community, and they wanted to rent to these two young women. And we found a caregiver who didn't really have any experience working with people with developmental disabilities, but she had worked with a lot of folks with mental illness in Chicago. And she really was kind of an outside the box thinker and was willing to partner with Pam and I and figure out how we do this. So we moved these two ladies and their caregiver and her husband into a home in Bellevue, and Sarah has now been there for 3 years. And she and her roommate have really thrived in an environment where there are just the two women with a caregiver who can provide more hands-on care, who can give them more attention. I didn't mention Sarah lost her mom during this time period, and so it's been pretty wonderful to see the caregiver step in and provide more of the nurturing and support that Sarah found missing in her life. That was Pam's and my first household together. It's still going great. That wonderful caregiver is retiring. She just had her second baby and feels like she needs to spend more time with her own family. But we have already identified a new caregiver who will be taking over in August. And she's doing respite care right now so that she's getting to know the women, and when she moves in and becomes their full-time caregiver, she will already be a known person in the household. So we're feeling really good about that. I think it's your turn again.
Okay. So how do you get started? If you are interested in learning more about shared living, the first step is our residential assessment. That is where we do a review of services, and it's appropriate for anywhere in Washington State. So if you're interested in that, you can go to our website, www.partnersforhousing.com. That's a number 4, partnersforhousing.com. Look under our services, and you can see the residential assessment. It's a really, really good first step. If you are interested in an adult family home and you're in King County, you can go to Community Homes website and fill out their initial inquiry form. If you're not in King County, your case manager can make you a referral to an adult family home, either through DDA or through Home and Community Services. And really, if you need more information on either one of these models, you can feel free to call Vicki or I. You don't need to call both of us because we work together a lot and we share information about people or names that we talk to make sure we can divide and conquer. So you can feel free to contact us and we can give you more information.
And I will add, you don't have to figure out which model you're most interested in before making a phone call, because we work so closely together and we are really happy, either one of us is happy to have a conversation with you about either model and make sure that you end up in the place that is most suited to what you're looking for. So if you want to just chat and explore these things in more detail, feel free to call either one of us.
And this is Sarah, by the way, on the end here, with her roommate and her caregiver and her son out enjoying the mountains on a beautiful sunny day. So now it's time for questions. We can open it up. Any questions?
I'm sorry I missed the start of this. I didn't hear the financial aspect. I work in the Seattle Public Schools in transition, and families are, they have to watch their money, and I don't know how financially possible this is.
So with shared living in King County, our formula is Section 8 plus Medicaid, personal care hours. They now call that CFC, Community First Choice hours, and parent private pay. So the Section 8, if you're in King County, there's a special program here in King County that you can get on the list through your DDA case manager, or we always help people get on that list when they go through our residential assessment. That makes a lot of things possible. In other areas of the state, sharing and dividing by 3 makes it a lot more affordable. But the shared living is a model that you do need to plan on a private pay piece. It doesn't, I think our highest private pay household, and they have the caregiver do a lot of different things, transportation and activities and independent living skills. And it's, I don't know.
It's not coming to me, and I don't want to
Yeah.
quote a bad
Right,
number.
okay, all right.
Call
It's
me
not
if-
as much
call
as
me
you
if
would
you want
expect
real
it to be.
numbers.
Yeah, yeah, call if you want real numbers. It's not what you would expect it to be. Does that answer your question?
And
No, you mean it would be higher or lower than I would expect?
It would be lower than you would expect, because you're sharing it with other families. Yeah.
so if you take a rental home, $2,400, you divide it by 3, you've got $800 rent per person. Medicaid will pay the caregiver, and the Section 8 voucher will pay for the caregiver's room or rent, and that makes a living wage for a caregiver. It also reduces the rent for the residents. And most adults with developmental disabilities are entitled to food benefits, which vary depending upon their income. But those are the pieces that come together.
When you say it makes a living wage for the caregiver, you mean the rent?
Offering free rent
Yeah.
as part of the package, the benefits package. They also get health insurance through the agency that they're working for. So between the care hours and the free rent, and the families sometimes offer a food stipend, sometimes a cell phone stipend. It really depends on the household and how much support is needed and how much Medicaid support they have.
And I'd just like to say that in an adult family home, the costs are dictated by DSHS. The room and board is at present $670 a month. That is the Medicaid rate. And Medicaid pays the caregiver directly. So the resident is responsible for $670 per month, plus any of their incidental expenses, transportation, recreation, etc.
I now have 2 questions. The room and board. What if my son has the EBT card, which is the food stamps, modern food stamps now? Is that counted in there? Is that part of it?
Because Medicaid, DSHS is dictating the amount, you are not able to use the EBT cards or Section 8 housing vouchers in an adult family home.
Okay, and that clarifies that. Now, Section 8, aren't there a very limited number of them? I know some are set aside for those with developmental disabilities, but it's like a waiting list forever?
In most areas of the nation, yes. But in King County, we have a program where you can get on the list and have a voucher issued in about 1.5 years. So if you're eligible for services through DDA and you're 18 years old, you can get on that list. And when your name comes up in 1.5 years, if you're not ready, you can stay there until you are ready. So it's a really great program. It's not available everywhere in the state.
We're going to make Jim run from one end of the auditorium to the other.
I'm new to all of this, and I was just wondering my son is on the autism spectrum. He's pretty high functioning right now, as far as we can tell. Let's say we fast forward and he's not able to live on his own. How does that work if he's kind of like on the borderline of he could almost live alone? I mean, do we qualify for something like this, or would that have to be like I would have to get a private caregiver? And is there any kind of a contract? Like if we put him in a house and it doesn't work, can we just pull him out and try something else? What happens then?
So I'll answer for adult family homes first. The residents in the homes that I manage have a wide range of abilities. And Andy, who I talked about earlier, the marathon runner, is able to do a great deal on his own. We have people who have 40-hour-a-week jobs. We have some residents who are able to drive. But they still need help managing their money or making sure that they're wearing clean clothes every day. You know, a lot of our folks have scatter skills, and so they're very capable in many, many ways, and they need a little bit of support in others. Maybe it's just somebody reminding them to take their meds every evening. And so adult family homes are an entitlement if your son qualifies through DDA or through Home and Community Services. And Home and Community Services is a little bit more of a functional assessment. Rather, they don't have the IQ stipulation that DDA does. So he may still qualify. And I've got a few residents who don't qualify through either of those programs, but their parents have chosen to private pay in an adult family home because they want that kind of community for their children. And so your son would not be excluded because he's too capable. We would always search for the best option for him, obviously least restrictive environment and all that good stuff. But we would be, wherever we served him, we would do it at a level that is respectful of his abilities and allows him the greatest independence possible.
And if I'll just answer on shared living. So I'm actually working with a group of 3 guys right now who are really pretty independent. They don't qualify for services through DDA, but they still need some help. So rather than having a live-in caregiver, they're probably going to end up having a caregiver that comes in, maybe in the evening to make sure they have a healthy meal, maybe a few hours in the morning to help them get out the door. But with the shared living model, there's a lot of flexibility around how you set that up.
And I personally would argue that most young men in their 20s would benefit from having someone come in for a few hours a day and help them pick up their rooms and eat a healthy meal.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's my editorial comment.
My son will be 18 soon, and he's on the autism spectrum, and he's been down in a CLIP placement at Orcas Cottage. And so his IQ is very high, but we did a daily assessment living because of the severe OCD and panic attacks. I mean, in our home, he didn't leave the home much for 2.5 years, and just to have seen him blossom to now, he's more friends with the caregivers than the kids per se, but it's much more social. And the concern is when he comes home, where are we going to be? But as far as functionality, you know, eating, bathing, taking his really needed meds, being able to leave the house, you know, he's concerned when he goes outside, what if someone said something to him in the store, so let's just not leave the house sort of a thing. We applied for DDA, we were turned down. We're trying again with the daily adaptive living skills, but we're still concerned that the IQ will not allow him. Is it something where there's a possibility something like this could work from? Because we don't want to see him get so isolated again. And if they have issues where when they get scared, I mean, you know, he's 6 foot tall and 250 pounds. That's part of why he's not in the home. Do they have caregivers who can work with the guys who are a little bit bigger and when they get scared can be a danger to themselves or others?
You know, I have to be very honest that in our adult family homes, we would not be able to make the appropriate accommodations for him. because we do have one caregiver with 5 residents. I would encourage you to talk certainly to Home and Community Services if you've not already done that, to see if he would qualify through them. If not DDA, do you have other ideas?
Home and
Pam?
Community Services, and there's a few men that I work with who didn't qualify for DDA but have high anxiety, and they were able to get some services through Home and Community Services and move into a house, a shared living house, and have the support they need when they need it. So, yeah, it can be done. Really, with shared living, anything is possible. If you can think of it and meet the right people to come together, you can make it happen.
Yeah. Is Home and Community Services one that works with those who have mental health issues? Because I know someone whose transgender daughter is very high functioning, but is also bipolar and has been hospitalized more than once. Is that some sort of an option for them?
Home and Community Services, they can get an assessment at Home and Community Services.
Yeah, they're down in Lacey, so
Yeah,
I'll
yep.
go tell them that. Thank
Yep.
you very much.
I actually have a question. So it might kind of relate to what you were talking about, but you know, a lot of the kids, a lot of young adults, you know, and adults with autism do have disruptive behavior as their sort of, you know, primary obstacle. So, you know, just kind of wondering what families, what kind of resources families, might be, you know, the same answer that you're just providing here, but, you know, how does that get paid for? How do you manage that level of support for those individuals?
There isn't a great answer to that, Jim, as you probably know. I think that for those families whose kids qualify through DDA, the best course is to really pursue the core waiver and supported living through your case manager. You have to make a really strong case for the need for one-on-one supports to your case manager, and I hope this isn't broadcast to anyone who works for DDA, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Take my chances. You do really have to know that their function is often as a gatekeeper. So there are a very limited number of slots for the core waiver and supported living, but they can be had if you show that that is really the only community-based living program that's going to meet the needs of your son or daughter. And so I encourage you to be a really strong advocate and to continue to ask those questions. Make sure that you're documenting the needs that your son or daughter has and keeping really good data. I know that that's not really what we want to do as parents, but it does really make a difference. And if you have an individual support plan for your son or daughter, read it carefully and look at what those questions are. And if you don't understand the question, always ask your case manager, so what do you really mean by that? Because they can only act on the information that you give them. And one of the things that we say when folks go in for their annual assessment is think of your son or daughter, brother or sister, on their very worst day if there was no one there who knew them to provide care. And that's the information that your case manager needs to have. So it's a brutal process for family members, but it can be done, and that is also a service that community homes can offer, is to really coach families on how to answer some of the questions, not in terms of falsifying answers, but in terms of really digging so that you make sure you know what they're asking, and then making sure to mention those things that are true for your family member.
I have a question regarding high-functioning autism and stories that I'm coming across from friends who have children in college, and they are encountering difficulties because they are capable to go to college, but college usually is of the attitude, you are now ready to do what you need to do with everybody else. And I know of one dad who had to get a ticket and fly out to Colorado to help his son fix his car and clean his apartment and write a letter contending one of the grades and so forth. So just getting business in order. And I'm wondering if your kind of program is something that can be available to families who say, okay, we know of 3 kids who are going to go to the UW. We can't imagine them living on front row. They need support. they might be functioning just fine in the classroom, but everything else, or even just getting to the classroom with the costs of already that you're paying for them to attend. Is there something that you've come across? Is that something that you've heard about? I've heard of one program in University of Alabama that has one dorm designated to that, but I'm wondering if that's something that you've come across.
Yeah, I have come across that in the people that I've been working with. Actually, 2 families, their sons, I believe, went off to college and actually had to come home. We also have Bellevue College that has a program there for people with disabilities, and so we have in Bellevue there's some people that need some support. So we also offer consulting services to help families think through what their options are based on their particular need. But in our roommate matching program, we have a couple guys that are going to Bellevue College, and they are currently living on their own with somebody who comes in to check on them a couple times a week, help them set goals, make sure they have healthy food in the fridge, but what they really want to do is, what the families want is them to have more social, and so we're really right now kind of looking for that third person for those guys, so we can work with those families on setting up a house. So yeah, sometimes just having somebody who really understands the systems and has been working it for a while, just to brainstorm with you, to help you think through what the options are, that's a service we offer as well.
I have 2 questions.
Okay, hi.
One is about the adult family home model with community homes. Does a family have to live in King County and have the individual's case manager be in King County for eligibility for your adult family homes?
No. If someone moves into one of our adult family homes, they will transfer their case management to King County.
Okay. And so you can do the shared living process with people from Snohomish County, for example?
Yeah.
Okay,
We
great.
have some people in our roommate matching pool that are in Snohomish County and Clark County as well, so yeah.
How does one become a caregiver?
Talk to me.
Okay.
Now.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that was a flip answer. So if you would like to be a caregiver in a shared living home, there is a 75-hour training program to become a home care aide. That training is available through a couple different agencies that Pam and I work with, and they pay you to take the training, and then you receive a certificate. You have to take an exam at the end, and then you become, I'm not sure what the term is, qualified to provide Medicaid personal care services. If you want to become a caregiver in an adult family home, there are more training requirements, including a 50-hour administrative training on how to run your own business, and you have to have 1,000 hours of personal caregiving experience that has been supervised. But I would be delighted to talk to you. I may stalk you.
We're always looking for people interested in being.
It's hard to
in
find
getting
good
in the field.
caregivers.
Right.
I would say, and in King County in particular, housing prices are prohibitive, and finding good caregivers there's a real scarcity. So we really appreciate people who have the heart either to rent their homes to us at Section 8 standards or to provide caregiving services.
I had a follow-up question regarding the college
Okay.
situation. So then, with that, if your process is up to 18 months or 2 years, does that mean those students and the parents should be thinking about it junior year, contacting you and figuring out how this situation could work so that they're ready for freshman year? Or what would your advice be?
That's a good question. It's always good to start planning early.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, jump in.
I would say that planning for college is a multi-year process for everyone. And everybody starts doing it their junior year. I think for young adults with developmental disabilities who are going off to college, they need to think hard about the housing piece along with that. So, where somebody else might be thinking about which fraternity they want to pledge, not recommending that for a lot of the folks I know, but they should be planning for the housing right along with which college is going to be the best fit for them. What is the cost of the college, what support programs do they have, what kind of student learning programs do they have, et cetera, et cetera.
I could just add to that. I know my son did take 7 years to get an associate's degree at North, but starting out with the community colleges that do offer some disability services and working from there and start planning there to transfer. Anyway, for most people, it's actually a good idea to start out community college and then transfer. But, and I think both Bellevue and Heinlein have both specialty programs.
So if I can recap, you're saying that if you do have your young adults start at a community college, they can perhaps help you make plans for transitioning to a 4-year college, and you can, right.
Hi, my son is 18 and he's be a senior next year. But my question would be, how do you help the parents like me that worry too much, worry about them? It's not that the child's not capable, and would probably love being in that family housing unit, but you worry because their communication skills are, like he's verbal but only slightly, like for his wants and needs and hi, how are you, or to tell you how his day was. But if somebody were like to beat him up or steal something from him or ask him for something, he'd give it to him. So how do you help with that part of it?
You spend the time needed to get to know who's going to be providing care for your son. So first of all, most parents are like you. I was like you. And there's a lot of trepidation. So we recognize that this is a transition not just for your child, but for you as the parent as well. And we spend a lot of time talking to parents, figuring out, what are your expectations? Like Pam was saying, it's a process of creating a shared vision and making sure that we understand the needs of your son and what level of support he needs. It's never going to be the same as mom, and that's part of the reason they want to move out. But we do place a very high value on safety and on acceptance. So it is a lengthy process, and you can start educating yourself. You can come visit some of my homes, and you can see how the guys live. And we can talk about what their growth trajectory has been since moving in. I can't think of any family members who weren't at least a little bit terrified when their kids moved into our homes. The other thing is, it's not like you won't be part of their life. So while you won't be responsible for day-to-day tasks, you can see them anytime you want.
I have one more question, actually. So, obviously this is a big need, housing for adults with disabilities, kids, people with autism, is something that needs to happen. We need more of people like you who are going to be working on this. So, if you were to say, what do you see as the kind of biggest issues in our community, and what would your crystal ball or your sort of wish list be? What do we want to be in 5 years? And finally, what can parents do? What can we do to help advocate for changes in the community? So 3 questions.
So you want me to start?
Okay.
Okay.
But I'm just dying to answer.
Okay, go.
No, you go first. It's a great question,
Yeah,
Jill.
it's a really great question. So one of the great barriers that I see is families finding other families with whom to connect with and meet compatible roommates and other compatible families to work with. So, our vision is to develop the match.com for people with disabilities and their families, where they can connect online in a very safe way to explore housing and caregivers and on a platform. So I'd love to see that come in the future.
And I would take a little bit, I'm looking at it from a little bit different angle. I think legislative advocacy is essential. We have very little funding for housing in the state of Washington. And so I spend a fair amount of time in Olympia just trying to make sure that our legislators know that there are people with developmental disabilities who need affordable, supported housing. It's not all elder care. And they tend to think that the elderly population is handled, but they miss our guys entirely. So you need, and especially right now that the session is out, write your legislator. Tell them your family story. Tell them who your son or daughter is and what their support needs are, and the fact that you are interested in housing and you understand there's not much available. I think that's a really crucial piece, so that we raise awareness in Olympia that this is a burgeoning problem. Another piece of advocacy that you can do is advocate for higher Medicaid rates. The Medicaid rates that are reimbursed to adult family home caregivers were just raised for the first time in 10 years. And that's a travesty. People are actually telling adult family homes not to take Medicaid clients because you can't break even providing care for them. So we have to advocate for higher Medicaid rates so that we can hire great caregivers like this young woman in the front row here, and ensure that they have a living wage so that they want to stay, so that they can do the type of work that they want to do and still be able to afford to buy a car. The third thing that I would like to present to you is that we need more affordable housing. And nowhere is that truer than in King County. But there are lots of developers who have access to tax credits in order to set aside units for people with various types of special needs. And you can talk to your legislators about that. And if you know anybody in the building world, if you know anyone who owns a construction company, if you know somebody at one of the big local builders, ask them about their set-asides. Ask them if they are, putting a couple units aside specifically for people with disabilities and ask them how they access those referrals, because that's sorely lacking. We don't know about those vacancies until they're gone. And so those are 3 things off the top of my head. But you've got to make sure your voice is heard in Olympia. And people do care. They count how many people contact them, and the more folks who contact them on a specific topic, the more likely we are to get some legislative action on it.
Oh, I thought you were getting up through. You're coming to me to get the microphone?
Not that you need anything else on your plate, but like I belong to an organization called moveon.org, and they'll send out stuff to the list, and then you can either just send it directly to your senator. They've pre-written a letter, a paragraph, a letter, and then specific bill or what they'd like to see, and then down here you can add your story. If any group like ARC or you guys or anyone want to take that up, get a list, share it through the Autism Center, different groups, then I just think it would be so much easier for parents. Okay, these are the legislatures, this is what we're specifically asking for, and if you have, time, add your story here. Might have a bit of a more impact.
Right. And the ARC of Washington State and the ARC of King County both have a similar email protocol on their websites.
Oh, nice.
So you can do that. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah.
Oh, well.
I'm curious about the terms of Section 8.
Okay. Do you have a particular question, or you just want me to tell you about Section 8? Okay. Okay. I'll just give you the quick overview. So Section 8 is a federal housing subsidy administered by HUD, and actually it's administered by local housing authorities. The funding comes from HUD. When you have a Section 8 voucher, you pay 30% of your income toward rent, and the housing authority pays the rest up to a payment standard set by HUD. Some of the great things about a Section 8 voucher is that you can request accommodation for a number of things. One is for a live-in caregiver. So if you're one person and you need to have a live-in caregiver to ensure your health and safety, you can request reasonable accommodation for a 2-bedroom voucher instead of a 1-bedroom, and it's still based on 30% of your income, and that way you can offer free rent. Some families have set up situations like that where they offer free rent to somebody who's there at night to make sure that they're safe. Was that sort of a general enough overview, or were you?
30% of income, and then HUD funds the rest
up to a payment standard set by HUD. So the local housing authority funds it up to a payment standard set by HUD. And you can, for instance, go on the King County Housing Authority website and look under landlords. You can put in a zip code and you can see what those payment standards are.
From your real world experience, is that a ridiculously low?
It has been ridiculously low. It has been ridiculously low. King County Housing Authority about 3 or 4 months ago raised their payment standard in King County, and now it's actually it's a lot better. Seattle Housing Authority is I've heard thinking about raising theirs as well, but it's often challenging to find a place within the payment standard. Another thing you can do if you can't typically rent from a relative if you're on the Section 8 program, but if you're a person with a disability, you can request reasonable accommodation to rent from a relative. So families have purchased homes in neighborhoods where their son or daughter or sister or brother lived and grew up, and they know the neighbors. They buy a place and then rent to their son or daughter which is another really great accommodation with Section 8, because you always worry if you're in the just general rental market that the landlord in a year or two wants to sell, and then everybody's scrambling again. So it makes a really stable housing solution for some people. So, and you can apply for Section 8 if you don't live in King County. You can apply to any housing authority that opens their Section 8 list. Unfortunately, the regular list in King County and Seattle, they open about every other year. Last time they opened the list for a 2-week period. They got 25,000 applications. They did a lottery for 2,000. So those 2,000 people got on the list. But if you always try to get on the list, you might get on. And if you don't try, you'll never have the opportunity. So you can apply to other housing authorities. The trick is, if you don't live in the jurisdiction of the housing authority when you apply, the rule is that you have to live in that jurisdiction for the first year. But if you're a person with a disability, you can request reasonable accommodation to transfer your voucher early. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with accommodation requests to make the program work for your son or daughter. And I would just say, get on lists. If you're not in King County, get on lists. It makes a lot of things possible. Yeah.
When my son first went into the CLIP placement, and it took a year and a half to get there, there was so much guilt. Just like weeks and weeks of tears on my part of feeling like a failure as a parent. And then what everyone had said at the Autism Center turned out being true. I wound up really enjoying him now that I could be mom. Let's watch a movie together. Let's rent a thing. Let's play a board game, as opposed to, why haven't you taken your meds today? When did you last shower? It went from conflict to actually being enjoyable, although he still, of course, has shutdown moments. Is this something, if they get into something like this, it's still like that, where you're still involved with them, but in a happier way? They don't feel abandoned so much? Because I will say, at first, being there, he really did, feel rejected a lot but now he enjoys being there more than at home.
So that's what we see too. It takes a while for people to get to know each other, and our process is typically a step-by-step kind of a slower process. So by the time they move in, they're ready to move in. And there's a lot of growth that happens when they're gone. And what we hear time and again on the weekend when they go home from the parents, they're ready on Sunday to go back home. They want to go back to their place. And we hear that a lot.
Okay, any more questions? Well, thank you, Pam. Thank you, Vicki, for this great information.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out on this sunny and bright summer evening. So we'll see you next month.
Okay, great. Thanks.